online lectures with assigned readings, multiple choice quizzes, and exams. So please enjoy. So the first lecture will be the basic principles of biology, cell organization and function. Next. So before we will start about the cell organization and function, we need to know what the levels of cell organization is. So we will start from discussion of single cell, following by the tissue, organ and organs system of organs. So let's talk about them more detail. Next, single cell. As you may know, cell is the smallest structural unit of an organism that is capable of independent function. One of the brightest examples of the cell is a white blood cell, which is widely disturbed in your blood. Modern biologists, scientists studying more and more deeply two types of cells. There are animal cell and plant cell. As you may know, they have a lot of differences. However, they also share a lot of the common features. We will talk about them a little bit later. Next, let's talk about this next cell organization level, tissue. Tissue is a group of cells that all do the same work and have similar structure. In human organisms, we have several types of tissues such as muscular tissue, nervous tissue, connective tissue, epithelium, and etc. So, as one of the examples of the tissues is the muscle, which makes our muscular system and linings in our digestive system. Next, the next level of the cellular organization is the organ. As you may know, organ is a group of tissues that work together for performing a function. So it means that organs do not consist only from one type of cells. It is the combining of the several types, such as the heart, kidney, and lung. They all consist from the muscular tissue, epithelium, and connective tissue. Next, so when we will have several organs sharing this common features and common functions, we will have the system of the organs. So, organ system is a group of organs that do a certain job. One of the examples of the organ system in our body is the circulatory system, which consists of lungs, heart, veins, arteries, kidney, and the whole organism itself. Next. So, as a scientist, divide the cells into two major kinds of cells in a means of the whole kingdoms. So, the first of them is prokaryotic cell. Next. So, what is a prokaryotic cell? Prokaryotic cells are the cells that do not have a cell membrane around their nucleus. One of the examples of the organisms that have the prokaryotic cell is the bacteria. As you can see, it has no nucleus within its structure and its hereditary information spread out throughout the cell. So, prokaryotes are molecules surrounded by a membrane and cell wall. Prokaryotic cells lack characteristics of eukaryotic subcellular membrane enclosed organelles, but may contain membrane system inside a cell wall. So, now we know what the prokaryotic cells are. So, let's talk about the eukaryotic cells. Next. So, eukaryotic cells that have a membrane around their nucleus. So, example is the animal cell and plant cell. Also, we can include algae, fungi, and protista. Eukaryotic cells usually are 10 times larger than prokaryotic cells, and also the basic eukaryotic cell contains the following organelles: plasma membrane, cytoplasm, which is the semi-fluid inside the membrane. Also, all of them has the cytoskeleton, the microfilaments and microtubules that suspend organelles. This gives its shape and all to motion. Also, all the eukaryotic cell has membrane enclosed subcellular organelles. Next. So, when we will start to talk about the eukaryotic cell itself, let's talk about the outermost organelle, which is the cell membrane, and we will discuss the movement across the cell membrane because it's the main part of the cell membrane and its function. Next. So, materials move in and out of the cell discuss what is passive transport and active transport means a little bit later. Let's talk about the cell membrane next. So, the cell membrane is made of three parts: phospholipids, proteins, and carbohydrates. The cell membrane acts like a fence with gate through which only certain things can enter. This regulates the molecules by making sure that only the molecules that the cell needs can enter through the phospholipid bilayer into the cells. This system helps to get rid of the harmful products that cannot be used and all of the healthy products into the cell that it needs to use. So this gatekeeping activity by the cell membrane is called selective permeability. So the cell membrane acts as a fence that is isolates the inside of the cell from the external environment. The cell membrane is really thin. Approximately 11,000 membranes stacked on each other equals the thickness of one piece of paper. And now, just imagine how thin it is. Next. So, now we know what is a cell membrane and how it looks. Let's talk about a little bit its function. So, types of movement across the cell membrane. Next. So, first of all, let's talk about the passive transport. Passive transport is the movement of molecules across the cell membrane and does not require any energy. It's dependent on the permeability of the cell membrane, and there are three main kinds of passive transport: diffusion, osmosis, and facilitated diffusion. Next. So, what is the diffusion? Diffusion is the movement of molecules from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration. As you can see on the picture on the slide, the salt on the left side is very concentrated, and they will flow through the membrane toward the side where the concentration of that salt are very small. That makes the diffusion. Next, facilitated diffusion. As you may think, the diffusion and facilitated diffusion are very similar to each other. However, there is a little kind of difference between them. Facilitated diffusion is a process that does not require ATP as the diffusion itself, but does require cell membrane proteins, which are called carrier proteins, to carry the molecules across the cell membrane from an area of higher concentration to the area of lower concentration. That protein is called carrier proteins, and also that carrier proteins sometimes form ion channels. So, next, osmosis. Osmosis is the movement of water across a semi-permeable membrane. So, osmosis is the movement of water, red dots on the picture, through a semi-permeable membrane to a higher concentration of solids, which is the blue dots. As you can see on the picture, the water is the red dot and the salts are blue dots. So the water red dot will move toward the highly concentrated side with a high concentration of salt, which makes the osmosis transfer. Next. So, now we know all aspects of passive transport. Let's talk about the active transport. Active transport requires the cell to use energy, usually in the form of ATP. So, active transport creates a charge gradient in the cell membrane. For example, in the mitochondrion, hydrogen ion pump hydrogen ions into the intermembrane space of the organelle as a part of making ATP. Active transport keeps unwanted ions or other molecules out of the cells that are able to diffuse through the cell membrane. Active transport uses energy to send substances against the direction they would travel by simple diffusion. That is from a region of low concentration to a region of high concentration. And from the school program, you know that one of the brightest examples of active transport is the potassium and sodium pumps. Next. So, one of other neither active transport, neither passive transport is the endocytosis. What is the endocytosis? As the name suggests, endocytosis is a process in which a substance gains entry into the cell without passing through the cell membrane. Actually, the cell membrane engulfs the substance that should enter to the cell, engulfs it, and goes inside of the cell with itself. Next. to look at the cork. So, Robert Hooke was from England and he discovered what a cell was by looking at a piece of cork. However, he didn't know that it's a living organism. So, then later in 1673, Arnold van Leeuwenhoek, which is a Dutch scientist, invented a microscope that we recognize today. He was the first person to discover a single-celled protozoa. So, protozoa is like a pound of scum, and he also looked at the blood cells. And he actually the first man who introduced the term of cell. Next. Then Schwein and Sweden discovered and studied the cell in the majority of the part of their lives, and they made a cell theory, which consists of these 7 postulates. So you need to memorize all of these postulates, and you should be able to answer for any questions on your following exam. So let's go through the cell theory very quickly. First postulate says that all living organisms are made of one or more cells. Second, cells are the basic units of structure and function in all organisms. All cells come from previously existing cells by simple division. The activity of an entire organism depends on the total activity of its independent cells. Energy flow, which is metabolism and biochemistry, occurs within the cell. Cell contains hereditary information as the DNA, which is passed from the cell to cell during cell division. And all cells are basically the same in chemical composition in organisms of similar species. So, according to the cell theory, viruses are not living organisms, as you may see, because it's controversial to the several cell theory postulates. So, because of this, viruses are not living organisms. Just remember that. Next. So, let's talk about the part of the cells, which we call organelles. The things or structures, parts, inside of a cell that perform the function necessary for the cell to survive. So, organelles in the cell is the same thing as the organs in our whole body. So, think about your heart, lungs, and liver. They're all organs or organelles of your body. So, the cell has parts like this inside of itself. Next. So, let's talk about the cell membrane again. You already know that cell membrane found in all cells. So the very short description of the cell membrane, in the plant it is inside of the cell wall, in animals it's the outer layer and it has cholesterol with itself. Cell membrane is a double layer of phospholipids with proteins, and it is selectively permeable for particular ions and macromolecules. Function of the cell membrane, as we already said, support of the cell, protection from the external environment, controls movement of materials in and out of the cell, barrier between cell and its environment, and maintains homeostasis. Next. So, we said that the cell membrane in plant cells are located within the cell wall. So, what is a cell wall? Cell wall found only in plants, fungi, and bacteria, but not in animal cell. So, this is one of the main differences between animal and plant cell. So, you should remember that. So, the shortest description of the cell wall is that it is the outermost layer of the plant cell. It is rigid and strong and made of cellulose. The function of the cell wall is a support. So, because of the cell wall, actually, the trees can grow very tall. And the cell wall also serves as a protection from the external environment and allows water, oxygen, carbon dioxide to diffuse in and out of the cell. As you can see, it is very similar to the cell membrane. Next. So, as you may know, the main organelle in the eukaryotic cell is the nucleus. Nucleus found in all organisms except for prokaryotes, as it says by definition. So short description of the nucleus is that large and oval, may contain one or more nucleoli and holds DNA, which is the hereditary information. So the function of the nucleus is controls the cell activities and contains the hereditary material of the cell. we can say that the nucleus is the brain of the cell. Next. So, what is the nucleus? We already saw that the nucleus are located within the nucleus. So, because of this, we can say that the location of the nucleus are all the cells except for prokaryotes. Description of the nucleus is that it's found inside the cell's nucleus, may have more than one, and disappear during the cell division. And the main function of the nucleus is making ribosomes. Next. So, nuclear membrane. Nuclear membrane is the membrane that encloses the nucleus. So, because of this, it is found within all cells except for prokaryotes. The short description of the nuclear membrane is around the nucleus, double membrane, and selectively permeable for ions and the macromolecules at the cellular membrane itself. So the function of the nuclear membrane that is controls the movement of materials in and out of the nucleus. Next. So endoplasmic reticulum. Endoplasmic reticulum is also one of the major organelles in the cell. So the location of the endoplasmic reticulum is that it's found in all organisms except for prokaryotes. So the short description of the endoplasmic reticulum, that is network of tubes and membranes. It has two forms, smooth and rough. Smooth has no ribosomes attached to it, and rough is embedded with ribosomes. And because of this, the function of the endoplasmic reticulum diverges into these two forms. So the smooth ribosomes, the main function of the smooth ribosome is that this helps to synthesize carbohydrates, lipids, and the rough endoplasmic reticulum helps to synthesize proteins. So also, endoplasmic reticulum connects to nuclear envelope and cell membrane, which helps to be some kind of post office of the cell. Next. So, Golgi body, or also called as the Golgi apparatus. Location is that Golgi body is found throughout all organisms except for prokaryotes. The short description of the Golgi body is that it is the stacks of flattened sacs, and the main functions of Golgi body that is modify proteins made by cells by simply adding sugars on the top of each protein. And also the Golgi body serves as the site of package and export of the proteins outside of the cell. Next. Mitochondria. Mitochondria have been found in all cells except for prokaryotes itself. So description of the mitochondria is, as you can see on the picture, is a peanut shaped, has double membrane. Outer membrane of the mitochondria is very smooth, and the inner membrane folded into crystal. So the function of the mitochondria is it breaks down the sugar in the form of glucose to release the energy. And other function is the site of aerobic cellular respiration, which means that it makes ATP in the cell. Next. Chloroplasts. Chloroplasts are also one of the major organelles in eukaryotic cells, particularly in plants and algae, because it's found only in plants and algae. So description of the chloroplasts, they are green, all containing chlorophyll, which is the green pigment. It has also double membrane with inner membrane modified into sacs called thylakoids. Sacs of thylakoids called grana and interconnected with itself with the gel-like innermost substance called stroma. The function of the chloroplast is uses energy from the sun to make the food as a glucose for the plant. And also its process, that process actually called the photosynthesis, and during the photosynthesis the plant cells releases the oxygen. Also, I forget to mention that both chloroplast and mitochondria contain the circular double-stranded DNA, and because of this many scientists believe that mitochondria and chloroplast actually is symbiotic organisms within our cell. So what does it mean? It means that in the very ancient times, chloroplast and mitochondria have been bacteria because it has this circular DNA, and they enter to the cells of eukaryotic organisms and become our symbiont. So both of us, bacteria and the eukaryotic organism, benefit from these relationships. Next, ribosome. attached to ER. So free means that it's floating through the cytoplasm. And ribosome is made of ribosomal RNA and some kind of proteins. And the main function of the ribosome is that it synthesizes proteins from the mRNA, which is copying the information from the DNA. Next. So, let's talk about the vesicle or vacuole. Location of the vacuoles is that it's found throughout all eukaryotic cells, plants and animals. However, plant cells have a single and large vacuole, which is even bigger than nucleus itself. And in animal cells, they have small vacuoles, and there are a lot of them. So the description of the vacuole is that it's fluid-filled sac, and as I mentioned before, it's the largest organelle in plant cell. So the function of the vacuole is that it stores food, water, metabolic and toxic wastes in all cells. Also, it is to store large amounts of food or sugars in plants. Next, lysosomes. Lysosomes found in all cells, like in most of the eukaryotic cells. However, scientists doubt to believe that lysosomes only distributed throughout the animal cells, and the presence of the lysosomes within the plant cells is very doubtful. But I tend to believe that lysosomes are also distributed throughout the plant cells. So the short description of the lysosome is that it's small and round with a single membrane, as you can see on the picture. And the main function of the lysosome is breaks down the larger food molecules into smaller molecules and digests all cell parts. So according to the function, we can say that the lysosome serves as some kind of stomach of the cell. Next, cytoplasm. Cytoplasm is the second probably organelle that can be found throughout all organisms, and the description of the cytoplasm is clear, thick, jelly-like material. So organelles found inside the cell membrane can be found in the cytoplasm, and cytoplasm contains the cytoskeleton fibers. The function of the cytoplasm is that supports and protects cell organelles, and also it helps to transfer the information between the organelles within the cell. Next, cytoskeleton. As we already mentioned, cytoskeleton can be found within the cytoplasm. So because of this, cytoskeleton can be found throughout all cells, even in prokaryotic cells. So the short description of the cytoskeleton, that is made of microtubules and microfilaments, as you can see on the picture. This is the microtubules and this is the microfilaments. So the function of the cytoskeleton is strengthen the cell and maintain the shape and moves organelles within the cell. Next. So, centrioles. Centrioles are the organelles that can be found only in animal cells. So, the short description of the centrioles that they're paired structures near the nucleus and made of a cylinder of microtubule pairs. So, the function of the centriole is separate chromosome pairs during the mitosis. So, this is just short overview of the cell organelles and their function. Hopefully you enjoyed the first lecture, and hopefully you will have a lot of knowledge about the cell function and organelles. And please read the assigned readings and read through the slides very carefully, because there will be a lot of questions directly from the slides on your following quiz. Thank you for your attention. My name is Ilan Kineshev, and as I said, I will be your tutor during this course. See you on the next lecture.